Life is full of ifs. But if you want to cash flow like a pro and get paid up to 2 days early, safeguard against surprises and supercharge your savings, Regions Life Banking makes it possible.
Regions Bank, embrace the if in life.
Regions Bank, member FDIC.
Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio inside the Gas South Convention Center in Duluth, Georgia, it's time for Regions Business Radio. Regions Business Radio is presented by Regions Bank. Embrace the if in life. Member FDIC. Now, here's your host, J.D. Mueller.
Thank you, Mike Salmon. J.D. Mueller here, your host of Regions Business Radio. It is summertime in the South. It is the middle of August 2023. I give you that date. I typically do not do that. I do that because I think it's a good marker for where we are in the economy. It's an interesting time in the economy. Interest rates continue to go up. That's impacting people's ability to borrow and service debt. Mortgage rates are at a 20-year high, maybe longer than that. I would encourage you to go back and listen to a previous episode with Alan McKnight, Chief Investment Officer at Regions Bank, who talked about some of these things earlier. But, I think that I would do well. Typically, we do like a little market update or a banking update at the beginning. And it brings to light a couple things. If you're listening to this episode of Regions Business Radio and you're a business owner or an executive, and especially if you're a C-suite executive at a mid to large, maybe small-size company, I want to give you a heads up. I want to talk to you about a couple of things as it relates to how to interact with your bank during economic headwinds. It's very important that you understand what's going on in your relationship with your bank and with your banker. Okay, so I'm gonna draw from a recent experience, and this is an experience that I had with someone that's not even a client of the bank. It's what we would call a prospect. It's someone that we would like to do business with. They currently bank with another entity. They called me. I came in for a meeting. We were all prepared. We thought we were going to have this opportunity. And I knew within a few minutes of the meeting starting that my opportunity wasn't to uncover something for us to provide for them. The opportunity was for me to coach and advise them. They were let's just say they were in a little bit of a pickle with their borrower. They're in an industry that had recently been impacted by a months-long strike. And this strike impacted their business to the point that there was no revenue. There was no revenue coming in because the strike had shut down this industry. August of 2023. Remember, I'm not going back to the 70s for this conversation. I would have been 4. This conversation just happened. So my buddy was navigating a very trying time. His industry was impacted. Revenue had all but completely diminished. The most important thing that we talked about that day was, what do your loan agreements and promissory notes say? What do they say? What are you required to do as a function of your loan agreement? And what is the bank required to do as a function of the loan agreement? I say that speaking to business owners, executives, leaders, to say this: blow the dust off your loan documents and get familiar with them. Get them out of the file. Open up whichever computer system you use and go to that file explorer. Get out your loan documents and look for a couple things. This is important. In the current banking and business environment that we're in, the concept of no surprises is as important as it's ever been in business. I'm asking you to avoid surprises to your bank. Don't surprise them with bad news. As a matter of fact, don't surprise them with good news. Something's good happening, let them know. If something's getting weak, let them know. Pull out those loan agreements, and you're sure to find a couple of things. There's going to be a financial reporting requirements section. What are you required to give the bank as a result of the fact that the bank has availed their balance sheet for you to use in the form of a term loan or a line of credit? And as I say this, I'm looking at our podcast producer, Mike Salmon, and I'm thinking, if I were in a room full of people, they would probably have gone to sleep by now with this topic. So wake up over there, Mike. So pull out your loan agreement. Look at those financial reporting requirements. You might see tax returns, business tax returns. You might see a compiled consolidating financial report. You may see a review or an audit, along with a time by which they must be submitted to the bank. Review that, put it on your calendar, put a reminder on your calendar. Make sure that you get that information to your bank right away, when or before it's due. The other thing that you might see is a requirement for quarterly financial statements, profit and loss and balance sheet. Quarterly, maybe some period of time, 30 days after quarter end. Increased information to your lender in a trying time in the economy is a must. Please, 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 Mr., Mrs. Business Owner, executive, especially if you're in a CFO or controller position, make sure that you aren't just hitting send on those financial statements. You're providing a summary of what the banker is going to see. Have you added new customers? Have you lost key accounts? And if so, what would that do to the overall financial performance of your company? You may lose a great customer, but it could be good for your company. If they're taking some of your resources, or if they've negotiated you down to a point that you're not profitable and you have more expenses in that account than you should, use that reporting opportunity with the bank, not just to check the box because, oh my goodness, my banker's asking me for financials again. I got to send this up. No. You have got to tell your banker your story. I am pleading with you. You don't have to bank at Regions Bank right now. I hope you do one day. Wherever you're banking, make sure that you are providing those financial statements along with some sort of summary or update of what's going on in your company. And then also, there's probably some requirement of personal financial statements or personal tax returns. Those are very important to get to your bank really before they ask for them. Then there's another section in your loan agreement that may exist called financial covenants. Depending on the structure of the line, how big your company is, how big the line is, you may see something as simple as a debt service coverage, which is basically a function of, are you generating enough cash to satisfy the minimum debt requirements on your company? We would like to see that plus a spread. So you may think that you're doing good covering your debt obligations as a multiplier of one time, but we would like to see it. Most banks would like to see it at 1.25 times to 1. So that would be sort of a profit and loss type of covenant. But then you also might see a balance sheet covenant, which may measure your debt load compared to your tangible net worth. Or maybe there's a combo calculation that would combine P&L and balance sheet, like a cash flow leverage. It doesn't matter what it is. Mr. Business Owner, Mrs. Executive, doesn't matter which financial covenant it is. Make sure you understand it, and make sure you're able to submit it to your banker now and show your ability to understand it. We see some companies doing extremely well. We see some companies being weakened. I don't care if you're at the top of your game or if there's some bumps in your road. Right now is not the time to hide from your banker. Now is the time to provide accurate, timely information on a regular basis as required by your loan agreements. And I'm asking you to take the time to brag on what's going on in your company. If it's hard times, brag on your ability to lead through it and how you're going to see through it, and get your bank on the same page with what's going on in your company. I see a mic at Mike Salmon's mouth. Is all that sort of boring, interesting?
No, you've been talking for 9 minutes now, and I'm thinking, you know what, I could probably sum it up. Every 6 months or so, go to lunch with your banker. Just go to lunch and talk to your banker maybe every 6 months.
At least. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean, just communicate with your banker. That's it.
Well, thank you for that. You're exactly right.
So,
and you should always bank with someone you know, like, and trust, so it shouldn't be a hassle.
if you don't want to go to lunch with your banker, you're at the wrong
Call
bank.
me.
You're at the wrong.
I'm a lot of fun for lunch.
You are a lot of fun. I will. And you pick good restaurants, too.
Oh, that's a whole nother episode. I don't know if we're allowed to do that on Regions Business Radio, but we should have a restaurant review. So that's my market update. Refamiliarize yourself, because a lot of times you go to a closing and you're most interested in your rate and fee. Did my banker get it right? Am I paying what they said I would? Please do. By all means, make sure that's right. But also know what's expected of you and what's expected of the bank so that you can navigate whatever financial headwinds we're in so that you can navigate them together. No surprises. As a bank, you can pretty much know what's going on with us if you look at whichever financial news site you prefer, or listen to Regions Business Radio. We'll tell you what's going on. But today's a special episode. That's my market intro, a little bit of a plea to our business owners and executives out there, primarily in the Gwinnett, Northeast Georgia area. Just by way of reminder, Regions Bank, headquartered in Birmingham with a fantastic team of bankers in and around the metro Atlanta area. And I'm going to introduce you to the newest member of our team. Mike, what are we calling this?
New Banker Spotlight.
New Banker Spotlight with Nancy Jo Zimmer. Nancy Jo, I am so happy that you have trusted Regions to come join us as a banker. You're at the end of your first week.
I know. And what a way to end the week. I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you, JD.
Yeah, well, not only are we grateful to have you here on the Regions Business Radio, the Nancy Jo episode, we're happy to have you at the bank and excited about what we're going to accomplish together. So what's the Nancy Jo Zimmer story? Tell us how you got into banking.
Oh, gosh. I went to school originally to be a teacher. Never did teach in a classroom.
Wait a minute. Where did you go to school to be a teacher? That's important?
Yeah, I ended up at Medici College up in New York, Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. But you grew up in?
I grew up in Athens, Georgia.
Athens, Georgia.
Go Dogs.
That's right. Thank you very much to our SEC brothers and sisters out there. So that's the point I was getting at.
Gotcha.
We got to say an Athens girl on the team.
Yes, go A-Town. I spent 5 years in Fort Myers, ended up meeting my wonderful husband. Been married for 17 years, and he was originally from Rochester, New York. So we spent 11 years up there when we started our family. Mother of three, ended up in banking in Buffalo, New York. Fell in love with business banking, worked very hard to get to where I am. Went back into my business degree and ended up with a master's from Niagara University. So I spent 7 years up in a regional bank in Buffalo, moved down here in 2017, went the big bank world, and now I'm so grateful to be back regional, no pun intended, with Regions.
Yeah.
JD, how does a girl from Athens survive the Buffalo or North New York winters?
Well, you know the snow blows this way, so very difficult.
It blows like left to right instead of coming straight down?
Yeah, you stay fit because you're running everywhere. You don't want to stay in the cold.
Well, yeah, I can. I mean, we just see one flake of snow and everybody's running to get
down the city.
Milk and eggs and bread. And what do people think they're going to do with all that milk and eggs? I mean, you just live off French toast for a couple of days? I don't know.
Well, there's something nostalgic about being snowed in, you know. And then comes February, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot do it. I cannot do it."
See, yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, we got snowed in '93. That just feels like one of the
We
last.
had half an inch that year.
Yeah,
Snowed us in, paralyzed the city.
paralyzed the city.
So I moved here January 2017. Do y'all remember that big, huge ice storm that shut down the city here?
The snowpocalypse.
That was the funniest thing when I arrived to me, because, you know, we have the salt trucks and everything to, you know, work with the snow and ice. But that happened the weekend that I moved here.
Did it really?
Sure did.
So Niagara gets a lot of snow.
It does.
The Niagara area. I mean, and then
The lake effect snow. is what they
Lake
call it.
effect. Okay, well, we get a flurry, and it just
Shuts
goes
everything
crazy.
down. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, schools are getting closed, and that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, so you're back with a regional bank, Regions. I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, and
We have.
and I respect the career that you built at a larger bank, the culture, and I know you're only a week in. The culture at Regions in your first week. Couple words you would use to describe what you've seen through a new lens. What have you seen that others might see in doing business with us in only a week?
Well, I think they're more understanding. I think that they can look at situations one-off versus just through a big, huge box. I mean, if you don't look a certain way, where I think Regions can really understand the client, their needs on a very granular basis. So that's kind of the biggest thing. Like, we already have some opportunities that are coming up that I don't know if I would ever absolutely be able to look at, from a box perspective. So I'm very excited, and it just feels like I'm taking my handcuffs off.
Yeah, and we want you to. I mean, so you say granular, and I think that speaks well to our desire to know the customer, to not always look at a customer through policy.
Correct.
We do apply policy.
Oh yeah, the policy is there, but I think we can provide a little more color around that policy to really make solutions that make sense for the business as it is in certain situation.
I gotcha. And I think we're built to do that. Our credit folks are willing to go out on calls.
That's very exciting to me.
Why is that? I mean, why would a banker? Oh, this is a good question. Why would a banker even care if a credit person goes out on a call? And why should a customer care if a credit person goes out on a call?
Well, number one, I think it takes a lot off the banker that the credit person can be right here and listen in person, because sometimes we take, the bankers, we have to tell a client's story, which is our job, which is great. But some questions that we might not ask, having that credit person there and it be meaningful, and to help tell the story of the banker. More perspective, more understanding.
I really like that you share it that way, because a credit officer that's willing to go on a call and can experience what's going on.
More personable, yeah.
If somebody makes widgets and all you hear about is somebody makes widgets, but you never go see them making the widgets, and then wouldn't you agree that when a business owner or an executive that's totally bought in on the business that they're leading, when they take you through their plant, when they take you around their office and they're pointing at this and saying, this is how we do this thing, or, there's so-and-so and they contribute this to the team, that really just solidifies their knowledge of the business. That's huge for a credit person to hear.
Absolutely. It provides a lot more color.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it's almost like they're more vested in it themselves,
You mean the credit?
The credit officer. Mm-hmm. They're more, inclined to be committed to that client themselves.
I like that. And to your point about the conversation, a lot of times, I love that you bring that up, because I've often said that in our line of work, we have to influence on both sides. We have to influence a client to consider us as their banking partner, and then we have to influence the bank to consider the client as a borrower, or as a transactor, as it may be. So we have to sell on both sides in our sort of role, but also in the way that we're set up to have a credit partner to go out. I was on a call with you earlier this week, which was fantastic. It was really good to be out.
Excellent.
After knowing each other for so long, and actually sort of hit the ground and go meet someone that you thought so highly of. We also we've not only taken credit officer, but in this case, we took our treasury management officer. How was that from your perspective, and why is it important for a client to interact with their treasury management officer?
Well, cash management is so important. As we know, cash is king, and that's, the most important thing. Money in, money out. It was nice because she has a different checkbox than I do, right? So I'm lending and cash flow. She's the tool for the money in and money out, right? So, for her to be involved from day one on a relationship like that is so important, because I'm not going back and, playing follow up on stuff that I didn't ask initially.
Mm-hmm. You're answering these questions, and it dawns on me. I don't know that I've ever thought about this before when I've just through our conversations, but it seems to me like you want to be very efficient with your time.
Exactly. And I'm so happy to finally have a cash management body again. Very highly intelligent, very effective one too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And if you're listening and you're in the Gwinnett area, Northeast Georgia, and you've not met Maria Smith, who is our treasury.
Excellent.
She hails from Decula, Georgia, right here in Gwinnett, and I believe that her and Nancy Jo are going to be connected at the hip for the foreseeable future. So if you haven't seen your banker, if you haven't seen your treasury management officer, and you're literally within the sound of our voice, no matter which of your preferred podcast mediums you're using, we can connect you with someone with Regions. But if you're in North Georgia, Gwinnett, then we'd love to have Nancy, Jo, and Maria come see you. So we shared a little bit of some things that you like: treasury management officer being in the field with you, credit officer willing to go make calls. You mentioned that at Regions we want to listen well, we want to understand well. What about you personally? When you think of yourself as a banker and you think about yourself serving customers, what do you want people to think about when they think of you?
Well, when I started my banking career, in business banking, having a portfolio and being an actual banker, I joined a firm and I was handed a very decent portfolio, and I had 7 challenged credits that were being managed on the line. So this was a regional bank. It was very challenging for me to be a new banker, have 7 quarterly reports that I had to do, and basically report to the COO quarterly. And it was like a room with a bunch of people in the room explaining these things that I didn't really know how to explain. But it was a really good way of coming into banking, because within a year I had all of those 7 credits turned around and they were performing again.
Wow.
It took a lot of work, and it was like, I don't think I booked a lot of loans that year.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I had, 7 challenged credits, but it took a lot of listening, on my part, and, advising them. And I was so green. But that was my way that I learned how to listen. So important.
Is it?
It is. Very.
How is listening important? I know it's a stupid question. I want you to answer it though. So, because you're going to send this out and you're going to want to meet somebody new as a result of Regions Business Radio episode, the Nancy Jo episode. Why is it important for somebody to know that you're a good listener?
Because it's not selling products and services. It's really providing solutions, and you can't get the best recipe unless you absolutely understand exactly what it is that they need.
Yeah.
And sometimes what they think they need is not really what they need.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Well,
It is.
We've seen those situations before.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this portfolio, you assumed the portfolio. There were 7 credits that were challenged. Within a year or so, you worked with them. You had them sort of bolstered and maybe upgraded, things like that. How about, and in doing so, you learned a lot about them. Part of listening, I think, is being able to exercise. This is a skill that I think is hard to acquire. Listening with an intense curiosity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because then there's a lot of situations you have to think outside of the box, right? For an example, like one of those credits, they had a loan. They were struggling with their product and taking it to market. It was a very aggressive amortization. So what I did for them is I really fought hard for them, and I found a way for them to cash flow, right? And it was a hard sell, because those credit guys, they don't like to change terms of loans, and they don't like to hold that debt longer. So you got to meet in the middle, and you got to be creative and come up with ideas that meet the needs of both.
Yeah. Manage risk on the bank side. And allow for cash flow on the client side. Yep. And part of that natural curiosity, somewhere along the way in culture, asking questions became kind of rude, but I think as bankers, we have to embrace almost a question bank, that we always want to know about our customers, because I've found in along my career, you can ask good, compelling questions. If you can be naturally, I feel like we do that well on this podcast. We try to provoke people to conversation by being naturally curious about whatever they're talking about.
One word: relatable.
Yeah, that's a skill in today's business environment that's almost lost, really.
It is, because all your business owners are very different. You have to be dynamic to be relatable.
Be relatable, be dynamic, but stay true to your core.
Correct.
Values of who you are as a person, as a banker. So you gave a little bit of example of one of those 7 credits in that portfolio. What would be another example of success in your career, without names, of course, without details, but sort of a success story when you sort of look through the rear view of your career so far? What's something that you're proud of accomplishing for a customer, or with a customer, I should say?
I just think back to those. I mean, that was the most painful year of my life, those 7 credits.
What year was that, by the way?
That was, let's see, 2013, 2014.
Okay, so we'd been through the Great Recession.
Yes.
A lot of bank mergers and acquisitions had occurred at that point. So I got you. I got the time frame.
But I did a field audit. And in that field audit, when you have a secure line of credit based on, the inventory, asset-based lending, that's what it was. And it was a candle maker. Doing the field audit, being able to go out there and see it in person, and then go back and explain it to the underwriter where, you were able to still provide that line. They were ready to cut it. We got it there.
So field audit. That's a unique experience.
It was very interesting.
Why would banks do a field audit?
Because there's different points in time that your inventory, I mean, you get raw material, you get work in progress, you get finished products, and for an underwriter to understand those different stages and not just the number that's in inventory, that was the key message that I was able to deliver there.
So during that time of your career, do you feel like you acquired some skills as a field auditor that you can now use as a banker, as a producing banker?
Yeah, absolutely. All that skill set's transferable to the front of the line. So the next year I did absolutely amazing. So I made up for all those challenge credits.
and I hone in on that because I think sometimes clients may look at bankers and just see us as peddlers of rate and fee, when in fact your experience in understanding inventory and how that how people Maybe somebody hasn't experienced a buildup of inventories and understanding that that's where their cash is pent up. If somebody looks around and they're scratching their head and going, "Where's our cash?
Where's our liquidity?"
Well, what are your terms, receivables and payable terms on that side, but also how quickly is your inventory turning, because you got cash built up over there.
That's right.
I just think that's a skill set that is very valuable, especially in the Gwinnett area where we have a ton of manufacturers. I'm not saying names, but I'm thinking through some clients and some folks that we know in town that have a variety of inventory specifications, raw material, finished goods, goods or work in process and all that. And being able to understand how those things impact your ability to generate cash and work through it. Why would anyone call you to bank with you?
Because I am willing to do everything I can for my clients. Absolutely. I'm not a transactional. I would pride myself on, the relationship first. If the relationship's there, then we'll talk some lending and cash flow. But yeah, not transactional.
I like that. And I saw it in person the other day. We went to one of your former clients. And before I knew it, we walked in the door. Before I knew it, you were behind the counter. You were hugging folks. Everybody was coming up to hug you, and you're the banker.
It's real.
Yeah. So I saw in that moment what I had envisioned of you the entire time we've gotten to know each other, and I am so very grateful that we found the opportunity for you to bring that skill to Regions. And through Regions, we can in turn take it to serve the business community in and around Gwinnett County. And, that would be what I would want people to know about you too, is if you have bring this up, I didn't think about this till just now. A lot of times when business gets tough, bankers disappear. Maybe there's hard conversations. If you were in that initial situation with those 7 credits, you got a PhD in hard conversations the hard way.
Yes.
You understand inventory and cash flow, correct, which is important for manufacturers and distributors.
Extremely.
You have already in 1 week shown me what I was expecting to see in relation to your interpersonal skills with customers that love you. Where have you been? We're so happy to see you. That's what they said when you walked in.
Yeah.
We've missed you. Come around here and give. Those types of interactions aren't there just because you got a logo on a card.
Correct.
They're there because you are the person that you say you are. And I think that is exactly in line with who we want to be as Regions Bank, in this community and in business communities around the Southeast, wherever we may be, in all of our footprint. So now we know why customers should call you to talk to you about being a banker. You're gonna bring a credit person, you're gonna bring a treasury management person, but more importantly, you're gonna bring you, and you're gonna help them. So that's really what I wanted to get across today. Any closing thoughts? I mean, any banking philosophy that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I think you had a good leadway today. That stood out. And I think you said all those things at the very right time, because there are going to be tough conversations. And I think reestablishing that relationship with your banker and taking out those loan documents is so important. People or they give them to their accountant. So if your accountant is running your business and all your financials and all that stuff, make sure they're compliant. You need to check in on your billable hours there.
That is thank you very much. We'll
You're
finish
welcome.
with that. Hey, by the way, and you may be more familiar with this than some, there seems to be in our industry, I'm going industry talk for a minute to abut what you just said, seems to be a lot of industry talk with beneficial ownership. I think there may be some regulatory changes in beneficial ownership, or maybe we have a different requirement at our size compared to the mega banks that you may have. Do you know enough about beneficial ownership to talk about why that's important?
Yeah, the reason why that's important is to certify the ownership of the business structure. And that came into play after the sanctioned countries to make sure that we know exactly who it is that we're banking with.
Okay.
It's part of KYC.
That's very good. It's frustrating, and it sometimes why is the bank asking me for this, and why is the bank asking me for that? And a lot of times the regulatory reporting requirements that we have to our regulators put us in a situation where we just got to you say KYC.
Know your customer.
Know your customer.
No
That's
acronym
right.
here.
And I think that looks two different ways, because we've talked about you knowing your customer, going behind the counter and hugging somebody.
Yeah.
That's one way of knowing your customer. But from two legal entities knowing their customer.
Yeah, and I think clients should expect to fill that with every transaction, because you can find out, the banks can find out about defaults, because if there is a change in ownership structure, somebody buys somebody out, and that loan document has two personal guarantors, that's the default. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason why it's so important to understand that document.
Yeah. Well, I put you on the spot with that one. I've put you on the spot the whole day. I think you handled it well. Thank you
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much for joining us, not only for this episode of Regions Business Radio, but thank you for joining us for this journey, this section of your career journey. I think you're going to do wonderful. I think, Gwinnett, business owners and executives should reach out to you. I would say I prefer not to give out personal information really on the podcast. We've done it before, but people can find you on LinkedIn.
They can. Nancy Jo Zimmer.
Pretty easy.
Just
go in there and search it up. Nancy Jo, no E, Nancy Jo Zimmer, and you'll find her. You can direct message her there. Of course, if you know myself or Mike Salmon and you want to get in touch with Nancy Jo, you can reach out to us. So with that said, it's great to have you at Regions. And by the way, if you're listening, we'd love to have you at Regions as well. And we look forward to banking you. And thank you once again for listening to Regions Business Radio.
Regions Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. This information is general in nature and is not intended to be accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. Regions believes this information to be accurate when recorded, but it cannot ensure that it will remain up to date. Consult an appropriate professional concerning your specific situation. The information should not be construed as a recommendation of a specific course of action for any individual or business. All Regions products and services are subject to qualification requirements, terms, conditions, fees, and credit approval. Regions reminds its customers that they should be vigilant about fraud and security, and that they are responsible for taking action to protect their computer systems. Fraud prevention requires a continuous review of your policies and practices as the threat evolves daily. There is no guarantee that all fraudulent transactions will be prevented or that related financial losses will not occur. Visit regions.com/stop fraud or speak with your banker for further information on how you can prevent fraud.